You're listening to the It Takes a Village podcast, episode 55. This is where the struggles are real, the callings are heavy, the kids are sticky. We come together because it takes a village, and this is your tribe. Hey guys, happy Wednesday. Today we are with a good friend of mine, Danielle Roberts, and during this interview, she was actually pregnant with her fourth, but I'm happy to announce that her fourth has arrived and he is adorable, and mommy and baby are happy and healthy. And let me just say how grateful I am to the women who have been on this show, Danielle including, who just bear all. They share their struggles, their journeys, for you guys, for us to come together as a community, and I'm just really appreciative that they would go there and share these very private things with us. And just in saying that, Danielle is bearing it all for us today. She's talking about her life as a mother, as a wife, going through depression, anxiety, and postpartum depression, and dealing with sexual harassment all while in the military. Also, what it was like to transition to civilian life and then redefine herself as all those things without being in the military, and then how she became an entrepreneur as a mother. These are things that I feel like a lot of us can relate to, whether or not we have been in the military, and it's just another unique perspective to look at a woman's journey through her eyes. And so I'm excited for you guys to hear this interview. Let's get to it. So before we get started, though, I kind of want to give people an idea of who you are, because they don't know you. So it'd be awesome if you could share a little bit about yourself, maybe some background, and a little bit about like what life is like for you.
Sure. So I always find this a super overwhelming question because I'm like, how far do I go back? Yeah. Since I just turned 30 today.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. I'll take you like the last few years. So I am married. I've been married for 7.5 years to my wonderful, adorable husband, Lucas. He and I met at a bar in Pensacola, Florida, while we were both in the Navy. We have 3 kids, Kiana, Amos, and Abraham. Aww. And one due in December. So that has been our life together. We have moved 8 times in the last 7.5 years, a little bit more than that, through the Navy. And then when I got out of the Navy in 2015, I was 36 weeks pregnant with Abraham. So he was born 2 years ago. And we moved back to my hometown. I'm originally from Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And he has family in the area. We visited multiple times over the course of our marriage, and nowhere else really felt like home. So we moved back home to my home, to my parents' basement when we got out of the Navy. Just started a different life together. Yeah. So it's been an adventure, is how I always describe it. So in addition to being in the Navy, I served as a missionary for a year in Mexico. My associate's degree in college is in Spanish. Yeah. And now I have my own business, or 2 businesses or 3 businesses, however many I come up with in a day. So that's kind of our life right now.
Oh my God, that's like a like no big deal. That's our life in a nutshell, but yeah, holy cow. You moved 7 times okay, so I have to ask though, was he the one that picked you up in the bar, or were you the one that picked him up in the bar?
Man. He doesn't remember the first time that we met. If that makes you feel any better. So we got introduced by a mutual friend. Uh-huh. And so yeah, he doesn't remember. So I I'm like, yeah, this is the first time we met. He's like, yeah, probably. But we kept seeing each other, and we met in end of November, started dating in February, got engaged in March, and married in April.
Wow, that's super fast.
Yes.
So you guys were like, you're it. Like, stop the search. Like, it's over.
Yes, exactly.
That's awesome. what like even like brought you to want to enlist into the Navy like when you were younger?
I actually went in, I turned 22 in boot camp. So I went in a little bit later.
Oh, okay.
But I had done the missionary thing in Mexico. I'd come back to Wisconsin, was working at a coffee shop, worked at a Bible camp, and I was like, yeah, this college, like my parents had set aside money.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't like see it going into debt to go to college. So I was like, well, the military's always kind of sounded cool. Let me just do that.
Yeah.
So I worked my butt off, get in, and then it was just kind of like the next step, where I was supposed to be. And I felt really dedicated to joining the Navy, not because I'm like super patriotic, but my dad was in the Air Force, my grandpa was in the Army, and it felt like something that I was just meant to do.
Was that like scary at all for you? Like I know that like it's easy to be like, this is what I'm going to do and walk in there and sign up. But then when it gets going and they're like, okay, let's go. Like, I think I would poop my pants.
There's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
It was a great time for me to grow my faith. Because when you get to boot camp, they take all of your civilian clothes, like everything that you come in with, like including your glasses. And I'm pretty much blind. Like I can't see.
Those.
So I had to be walked around with somebody holding my hand. What? Or like try and follow the person in front of me. What? I couldn't read anything on the walls. Like it was so unnerving.
Yeah.
To lose control.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But at the same time, it was one of those, like, okay, like I can do this, and I know that I'm, here for a reason. I got this. So it's just depending on how you look at it, like whether or not you have the mental capacity. And boot camp, honestly, is a big game. It's a mental game. Yeah. They probably don't like it described as that, but that's really what it is. And my dad had told me, they're just going to try and get into your head, and you have to be mentally smarter than them or stronger.
Yeah. That'd be so hard. Yeah, my husband was in the Marines, and he was in for 6 years, I think it was. And I think he went to, he was in Iraq around like the same, like 2009 and stuff. But he said that I was like, I don't know that I could survive. Like, because for me, I would need somebody to tell me like, great job, or like, you can do it, like to push me further when I'm being tested. But like, he's like, no, like that's the furthest thing from it. Like they're in your face and trying to break you down. So that way, when you're in these like moments of like ultimate testing, it's like you don't break when you need to be the strongest or whatever. That would be,
for sure.
Like I would cry every day. I think if somebody was yelling in my face, I would cry the whole time.
The Marines are a lot tougher than the Navy. I only had a couple people yelling in my face, and that was probably when we were doing like push-ups or something, and my push-ups weren't good enough.
You're like, I'm trying so hard.
Usually I was like trying not to laugh in their face because it's just ridiculous, the things that they say. And you just have to take it as that. And it's I don't know if I could go through the Marine boot camp though.
Yeah. I've seen videos and I'm like, yeah, nope. So was there a lot of females in the Navy when you were in, or were you kind of like one of like 5, or what does that look like?
It depends on the job field.
Okay.
In my specific job, there are more females just because it's not really combat related, but it totally depends. Yeah. I think the percentages are still 60 or 70 to 40 or 30 in regards for females. So there's still a lot more males. Yeah. Not a lot of females decide that they want to join the military.
Yeah. And so then how did you decide like that your time was over, that like, this is it, I'm done? And then how was that moving into like
real life where you have control, like, you know, like you're regaining a lot of things that you didn't have. How does that work out?
I decided that we had, in 2014, we had moved to Hawaii, which seems like a dream, like paradise.
Yeah.
I actually started having a lot of issues. I'd had issues kind of a couple different times during the rest of my military career with depression and anxiety. But when we were out there, it's a 10-hour flight from, or like 8, 9, 10, somewhere around there, from Los Angeles. And so being out there, feeling like I didn't really have a supportive group around me was really tough. And so as my depression and anxiety got worse, I started having suicidal thoughts. Thank God my son was conceived, because if it weren't for that, like I don't know where I would be.
Yeah.
And so I decided, just for my health, for my family, like I didn't want to have them have to deal with that and live like that. That I was going to go ahead and try and get out early. I had signed for 4 extra years. So I got out in the middle of my contract, due to the mental health issues. And then knowing that we were having another kid, made us want to move back home, especially because having 3 kids is a lot. Like, kudos to any mom that has any kids.
Yeah.
But when you start adding multiples, it's really hard. And we didn't have, like I said, we didn't really have a huge support team out in Hawaii. So we wanted to have more support. And then it was just time. I wasn't feeling the call to it. And in the middle of living in Hawaii, I had started my business. And I was ready and raring to get going on my business. And the week that I made my domain name for my business and got my name and started doing all the tax stuff to make me legal, we found out I was pregnant. And so I had my business and my baby coming, and I just wanted to focus more on my business, and I wasn't feeling the draw to be in the Navy anymore because of the effects on my mental health that it was taking.
Yeah.
So
and I think that's that's a brave thing to do, because so many of us like feel the pressures, and we feel like the toll that, you know, whether it's like a corporate job or something that we started that we thought we would love forever, but like we change as time goes on. And so then like things affect us differently. And then, but often like we ignore that, like those feelings, that it's no longer our calling, because we think like, oh, well, we started this, so like I have to finish it, or I have to keep going, you know, despite the fact that it's like wrecking our like, you know, wrecking ourselves emotionally or mentally or whatever. So I think that like noticing it, being self-aware, I guess that's like a huge thing, to be able to be self-aware and know like your limits and make a change.
It is. And so transitioning away from the military was tough, because I felt like I was giving up. And, you know, that's probably part of why we fight the changes so hard, whether it is corporate or moving from one thing to another thing, or recognizing those changes, because it is hard.
Yeah.
And I had accomplished a lot in the Navy. And so I was kind of like losing my identity in a lot of ways. It took about a year for me to recoup and like figure out who I was, just with what was going on. And then adding another baby on top of it, moving back home, like trying to figure out how people saw me, and people didn't even recognize me when I moved home, because they're like, who are you? That transition took time. And that's, I think, something people need to recognize, is that if you're going through a transition, it's not going to be immediate. Like, you could move, like we flew from Hawaii to Wisconsin in one day.
Wow.
But the effects of the transition are longer term than that.
So that was like your, like basically like a year of healing, right? Almost.
Yep.
So how did you go about, okay, what do you, so you know, we're dealing with depression and anxiety and all these thoughts. Like, how did you seek help for that? How did you find, like, how did you start the process of, you know, this year of healing and searching yourself and finding your identity?
I actually, when we left the island, is when I stopped seeing a professional counselor. So as soon as I moved home, a lot of the anxiety stopped because I wasn't in that situation anymore.
Yeah.
I was able to talk with a good friend and mentor of mine who had mentored me previously in high school. And that's why I'm such a big advocate of mentoring, is because you're able to talk and have that relationship.
Yeah.
And they may not have all the answers, but they can say, this is what what I've been through. This is how I've dealt with it. Let me show you some ways that I've dealt with my anxiety, or let me just pray for you. Cause like, that's a huge thing too. So finding my identity, like my husband was very supportive in me just taking downtime. And as I was growing my business, reinventing myself, basically, I wrote an article for the Huffington Post. And it's like 3 things I'm doing to find my identity. So I took like 24 hours, went to a hotel, kind of prayed through what I saw for the future and how, I guess, just for direction. I accepted things had changed because it's always hard to accept the change, especially something that big. And really just I allowed other people into my life who I knew were going to be positive impact. I started gaining new friends, or like re-engaging in friendships that I'd had previously when I was either living at home or elsewhere in the US, and saying, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. Like, being real with people. People don't want to talk about mental health, mental illness, mental, depression, whatever. But I found a lot of healing in sharing my story and allowing other people to heal through that as well. Because then they're able to see, well, it is possible. Like, you can go beyond, having a hard time. And if it's seasonal, like, it's okay to get help even in that moment.
Yeah.
So those were really the ways that I was able to move forward. Those are the ways I did it. I still have hard days, but it's a lot easier moving forward just to continue to take the steps one by one.
So, like, through all this, like, I know that you are a Christian woman now, but like, when you were going through all of it, is that like something that you were able to lean on and through the whole thing, or was it kind of like a search and release kind of like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like in the military, it's hard to have a relationship with, faith, or have faith in general, or a belief in things, because, it's just hard in the ways that you're tested and you're questioning, like what is what. And so how did that look like for you?
I 100% relied on my faith.
Okay.
That was not something that ever wavered. And I'm very, very thankful for that, because when everything feels so dark, I describe it as sitting in a box. Like, there's, nothing, and it's, pitch dark, and then God's that shining light into the box. And that's how it was. Like, that was what kept me safe. So I actually had found a church out there. I think between that family and just the personal relationship with God that I was able to maintain, that helped a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard in the military with faith. And I definitely stood out as somebody who was kind of like abnormal in that way.
I think that's awesome thing. Like, I don't know. it was probably annoying for everybody else, but I would be like, here I am. Like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, man, that is crazy that like you go through all these transitions. What, like, if there's a woman who is in the military or like about to transition into civilian life, like what would you say are the things that she needs to focus on moving forward to be able to transition like healthfully? Is that a word? Healthfully? 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 Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
You know, in a healthy way. You know, what are some tips that you would have, or what would you say to those women?
Well, definitely using resources like the Veterans Administration was super helpful because I am service disability connected. So I've got a disability rating from some injuries and then for my depression as well. So that's been really helpful to just have that thing that I know I can lean on. Like the Veterans Affairs has a really bad rap. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's not the greatest. They have a really good maternity care program, which has been interesting to find out. And so having that as a resource, talking to others who have gotten out previously, like if people want to hit me up, like I will help them out. There's a lot of different mentoring programs for veterans that are helpful in getting into different job fields. Finding a network is also really helpful, like just of family or friends. If you move to a place where you have no idea who anybody is, like if you can get connected with a church or a school or kind of just, even if you feel like you're the odd man out, which you probably will, doing something anyways, going to a networking event is really good. Even if you feel like you don't have anything to offer, you definitely have things to offer. And then just making a plan. I'm very type A, very like, I'm going to plan everything out to a T. Yeah. And knowing, I think having like my business to try and get going as well, and like figuring out, oh, unemployment's going to end at this date. Like I need to be making money by this date, or I'm going to have to get a job, you know, whatever. Yeah. Having a plan in place is going to keep you grounded and rooted. And then being flexible in that plan, just because things change and you never know what's going to come up when you actually set foot outside of the military for the first time.
Yeah, that's like the hardest things. I think those are like all the hardest things for us to, you're like, have a plan, like, be flexible and like loosen up on the control a little bit. And those are like our MOs as mothers. Like we don't do those things. So,
yes.
Or like as women in general, like we, at least there's some women that, you know, they're less type A and they can just roll with the flow. But I am like sort of not that woman. Like I'm learning, like after you have 2 kids, it kind of forces you to, you know, get outside of like, okay, you no longer have ultimate control. Like you have to be able to roll with it. So is motherhood like an easy journey for you? Because I don't know what being a mother in the military looks like, but I know that, well, like my pregnancies were awful. So like that would be a no-go. Like if they were to call me, I'd be like, dude, like, because I had hyperemesis, and so it's like throwing up 24/7 for almost the entire time. Mm-hmm. And like you can't, like everything smells because your sense of smell is like heightened to like 1,000. So I could smell like the people cooking chicken down the street, and it would be awful. Yeah, so like I wouldn't be able to like move, and you're dehydrated, and like you actually lose weight instead of gaining weight. And so if I was in the military, I'd be like, good luck with trying to get me to move. Like I will throw up every step I take. Like, so how do you mother while you're in the military? If that's like a loaded question, I don't know.
It is. When I found out I was pregnant, I actually I found out because I failed my PT test, which is awful. Like, it kind of could ruin your career depending on how many times you fail. So I failed because I couldn't lose weight, and I couldn't, like, you know, your body starts making changes day one. Right. Like, there's no hope.
Yeah, like you go for a run and you're like, wait a minute, this feels different. Like,
yes. So I failed. I ended up taking a pregnancy test, and it was positive. Like, who would have thought you had to plan your pregnancies around your PT tests and, like, pee on a stick before every PT test? Like, wow. Like, that's kind of, like, we learned at that point. It was kind of a tumultuous pregnancy because I was going through sexual harassment at work. My daughter was born on July 4th in Bethesda at the National Hospital, like where the president goes to get taken care of. Oh, wow. So, like, 4th of July was totally unexpected, 8 days early. And you've got all these people that are like, okay, you have this obligation. Like, we need you to check in with us. So right then and there, it was kind of stressful. Yeah. I had bad postpartum with my daughter. My sister, the one who's like type A, was living with us and was able to nanny for us. So I carried on my duties, did what I needed to do. And then I think it was after I started getting counseling for the depression and the sexual harassment, actually, that I was like, oh my gosh, like, I totally have postpartum depression. But there's these things that nobody tells you. And when you're working around a lot of men, they have no idea. Right. So it's very different raising kids in the military. And that's one of the things that was eventually leading to me getting out, was that we didn't want to have to move our kids every few years and try and figure out, like, different schools and stuff. Ugh. So that's like a little glimpse into mothering in the military.
That sounds awful. Like, I know that there are some moms that do it and they make it happen, and you know, they have their systems or whatever, but, like, I can't imagine, like, dealing with all those things and then being told, like, okay, like, now you have to, like, get up and go. Like, you need to be here. Like, you just had a baby, but you need to do these things anyway because we don't care.
Mm-hmm. Right. And losing weight, like, it's really hard to breastfeed and lose weight. So I wanted to breastfeed, but then I ended up having issues with that because I was so stressed, and because of the weight loss that you're supposed to lose weight, like, get back in your uniform. So
like, you pop out a watermelon and you get back into your uniform. Like, I will shoot you with my breast milk if you keep talking to me. That's what I would say. Yeah. So how did you deal with those things? Like, so when, like, the sexual harassment was coming up, and tell me if, like, this is awkward or brings up awful things, because we totally won't go there. Like, those are situations where I feel like, you know, you don't want to say anything, or you're second guessing, like, if you're making a big deal out of nothing, and you are afraid to, like, speak out about what's going on because of, like, the other person knowing that you're speaking, you know, like, that you're seeking help for what is going on or what they're doing. So, like, how did you navigate dealing with that in a, like, male dominant environment?
It wasn't until my husband was like, what are you saying? And why are you saying these things? And, you know, cause it's just, you start, like, using the same language that, you know, they're using in the harassment. Yeah. And it wasn't specifically directed at me. It's just working in that environment. Like, there's a lot of sexual harassment that happens in the military. And in a lot of different places too. Not just the military, but it wasn't until my husband pointed that out, and then one specific event, and I remember the exact words that were used, and I was like, I cannot do this anymore. And my husband was threatening to talk to people, and I didn't want him to be the one to do it. So I ended up speaking out and got a lot of retribution for it. It was really, really hard. Just not, it was not handled well.
Mm-hmm.
I will, I will say that. The perpetrator got his hand slapped, basically. And we all learned a lesson, and people were not happy with me, and I had to see those people every day. And it made life really difficult. But I knew what I was doing was right. And I actually was part of the sexual assault victim advocacy program mm-hmm. for the military. And I couldn't let it continue.
Yeah.
So I got a lot of heat. I got a lot of people looking very intently at me, wondering if I was a problem maker, wondering if I was like tattletale, basically. But at the end of the day, you have to do the right thing.
Yeah. That's so unfortunate. Like, so moms, if you have boys, like, we just need to like up our game on the way that they're supposed to treat women. I think that is like, you know, like that's just kind of the deal of the game. Like, mm-hmm. It's unfortunate that like so many of these men, because it's not just in the military, it's like anywhere, you know, like it happens all the time where like, you know, you're walking down the street and like they just holler at you or say things and it's like, who told you like that was okay? Or who, mm-hmm. like, you know, along the way, you know, somebody didn't say something to you or, you know, you didn't have a dad to show you how to be a man or like, you know, and so it's just so, it's like sad and unfortunate. And then it sucks for us because we're the ones that, you know, like get the repercussions for those things. Mm-hmm. And I want to know how you got involved with Boss Mom. So, like, you went from military, and then, okay, I imagine it has to do with you starting your own business, so I kind of want to, like, briefly, like, go into how this sort of, like, transpired, you starting your own business, and then, like, obviously, I got to meet you at Boss Mom, so.
Okay, so when I was in the military, I went with a girlfriend to the Disney retreat on Oahu, so it wasn't, like, all bad stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
You're like, I got to hang with Mickey, so it was good.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're on Oahu or if you decide to take a vacation to Oahu, we really enjoyed the Disney resort. But no, this was like, we went as a family. We did do that. But I went with a girlfriend, a military spouse who we had met in Maryland. So we'd been friends for a couple of years. She still has, it's doing really well, an online boutique, and she also was trying to break into a different market. So we sat there and we were like drinking drinks and trying to brainstorm how to get her into this other market. And I was like, man, I really enjoy this. Like, I really, like, it just gives me a joy brainstorming business stuff. And my idea, and you know, in starting your own business, things change a lot. So my idea was that I was going to be a business strategist. I had no business experience. I started taking business classes after I started my business. So I started out in December of 2014. And my husband gave me the Making Brands Happen from Laura Casey and Emily Lay. I don't think they even sell it anymore. So I learned about business, kind of got the DL, like started doing Instagram and a couple other things. And, you know, I said, like, you have to figure out what your business is going to be and if you can make money with your business before unemployment runs out. Yeah, that was me. Well, because I had unemployment when I got out. So, like, I had my son. Nobody was going to hire a newborn mother, like, with 2 kids. We couldn't afford daycare. So I was like, okay, this business has to actually make money. Mm-hmm. How is that going to work? And I was in a couple of Facebook groups throughout the summer before we had moved. And I met up with Dana Malstaff, who is Boss Mom. And she wanted pre-readers for her book. And so I ended up like volunteering to be a pre-reader. And And I get this email from her like a couple days after Abraham was born. And she's like, hey, you said you were going to do this. Are you going to do it? And I was like, yes. But we just moved across the country, like across the ocean. I just popped out a baby. Give me a couple days. So it was like 2 a.m. breastfeeding, reading the Boss Mom book. And I would email her and be like, there's a typo. Can you add this part about postpartum depression in here? So like that was my contribution. She said I was one of the most engaged people. And so she remembered me. And when I reached out to get visibility in November to like actually start making money with my business, because I wanted my business to survive and not flop and not have to go work for somebody else, she was like, well, I want you to be on the podcast. And I was like, I'm not even making money. What do you want me to talk about? And so we talked about my military transition. She also wanted to know what it was that I was going to offer people. And I was like, well, nothing I'm doing is selling.
Yeah.
How about the VA stuff? Like, that seems to be a good route. I was like, I'm really good at administrative stuff and I really like it. So let's just go with that. So I was like, I'll do $10 an hour for your listeners. She's like, I think I can use you. And so that's how I got started with her. I did the podcast episode we recorded in January of 2016. And I started working for her for like less than an hour a month or a week. I mean, so that was like the first client that I had.
That's like a pretty big deal though.
Yeah. Completely and utterly thankful for her. I'm still working for her almost 2 years later. Since then, she's grown my clientele and I've worked with other people and went from doing like just looking at podcasts for her to be on to the business management side of things. I'm doing some strategy work, which is what I love and what I originally wanted to do. And I've been moving into mentoring Christian women in business as well. And I wrote a book, a devotional for entrepreneurs and business owners based on Proverbs 31 and just the burden that God had placed in my heart to help encourage them. And kind of the mission tagline is equip, empower, and encourage.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And now correct me if I'm wrong, but this devotional is for Christian women entrepreneurs, but I feel like it could also probably still apply to just working women.
Yes.
Okay. And so I feel like when I was reading about your devotional, that is whether you are an entrepreneur, you're a working woman, it is super hard to still feel connected to your faith, still be able to, because you can't go to Bible studies or you can't do all the things and trying to manage the time to fit in a devotional or whatever. And that's kind of you're created for this devotional, that helps you sort of reaffirm your identity and your faith, but still in a way that you relate to as a working mom.
Yeah. And it's definitely, there is a lot talking about owning a business. But yes, it still pertains to working women. I had somebody buy it the other day and I've known her since 7th or 8th grade when she was working with our youth group. And I was like, you do realize this is for entrepreneurs and business owners, right? She goes, yeah, but I still work. I was like, okay. So know that the caveat is that it is written for entrepreneurs and business owners, but yeah. I think it still applies. You're right.
Yeah. And that's a popular mom game right now, because a lot of us want to be at home with our kiddos or have that flexibility because daycare is super expensive. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't make sense to put all of our kids in daycare when we go to work, because our job ends up breaking even for daycare. So basically you're working to have your kids in daycare. And so it's hard. And so now a lot of us are trying to find ways to do our jobs from home or, you know, start our own things so that way we can be present or be available to like go to our kids, you know, field trips or go to their assemblies or be there when they have a class party or, you know, be at home with them when they're newborns for the first year and stuff like that. And so I think that that'll be helpful for a lot of women who are navigating, you know, entrepreneurship, because it is a lot of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I think even I was talking with I did a radio interview. I'm in Wisconsin on the Minnesota border. So I went into St. Paul, Minnesota, and was talking with the radio host for the morning show. And he's like, there's so many women that we are not reaching because they're the ones that are staying home. They're the ones that are doing like direct sales or MLMs or whatever, but we're missing this huge group of women. And he's like, that's why we had you on. Like, people need to know that they can do their business and they can do it for God and they can do it with their passions. And that's just a huge demographic now. So you're so right. And it's going to be really cool to see how just, I want to call us like the moms who break the molds, because I feel like the 50s were like women going to work because they could go to work and like, but then, yeah, like we want to experience life with our kids. And I'm so much more fulfilled running my business from home, being able to pop over to get lunch with my kid at school than I am if I would have to sit at a 9 to 5 every day.
Yeah. Yep. I think that is like a lot of us. And I could think off of the top of my head, like at least 10 women that I know, like that have tried to do something, you know, whether it's MLM or start up their own business on the side. Like I can think of, you know, like you see it every day in your Facebook, people posting stuff, and whether you like, you know, agree with what they're doing or not, like it's happening. Like, and it's not because of like, and the way that I look at it is it's not like they're trying to sell like this gimmicky thing. It's that they're trying to like create this life. Like they're trying to bring in money for their family in a way that is healthy, or like the way that best fits them, or they feel like they want, you know, like it's the lifestyle that they're looking for. So yeah, I think that I love that the whole movement of like, let's support each other, you know, in our businesses. Like if we all bought from each other, we would be like set for,
right.
You know,
yes.
So.
And I think Dana had said that at, what was it? Was it Dana that had said that at the Boss Mom retreat? How we'd all be like, be millionaires.
Yeah, like she was like, because I mean, and there wasn't really even that many, like, I don't know how many women actually like went, but it wasn't like, you know, an auditorium full. It was like literally like 17 tables full. And she's like, if you were to buy from each other, because we all need each other's things, like we all need some, you know, whatever, whether it's in business or even like, you know, if you look on Facebook, all these women selling like, you know, shampoo or whatever, makeup, whatever, like that stuff you're going to buy anyway. So if you bought it from another mom, like, and she bought something from you and then it like did this chain reaction, we'd all be supporting each other in a really awesome way. But
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so I am super thankful for you coming on, and like I got to know you while everybody else got to know you, so that was really awesome. And yeah, I'm just really grateful for you speaking out about these things, because they're really hard topics, and you know, I press into them not because like I am nosy, but because I want to like help other women connect through, like I said at the beginning, through your journey. And I think that the more we talk about the hard things, you know, the less that we feel isolated. And so I hope that you feel that in doing this, and then I hope that women on the other side listening feel that as well. So I'm really grateful for you sharing all those really vulnerable things. So before we end, I wanted to ask you 3 last questions. Just FYI, everybody who's listening, I totally did not give her a heads up on this, and I normally do that for everybody who comes on. So, like, you guys need to give her props for these answers, because this is totally on the fly. But I want to ask you, the first question being, if you could choose one of the most influential books that you've ever read or that you have read recently, what would it be?
So I'm totally gonna fangirl here for a minute. The Boss Mom book from Dana Malstaff. If you are in that place where you want to start your business or you're not really sure what it looks like to start a business as a mom, the first Boss Mom book is really, really good, and she wrote it just for you. So that was like, and that was, I read it like 2 years ago. But I've read it like since then and kind of flipped through it. And it's so good to just get a reminder, like, I'm a mom and I can do this too. Mm-hmm. So that's good. And then on the Christian front, Jess Connolly just came out with her new book, and I think it's Dance, Stand, Run.
Yep.
Dance, Run, Stand, something like that.
Yeah, Dance, Stand, Run.
Thank you. I am like a chapter in, and it's blowing my socks off.
Oh
and
my
it's
gosh.
made me think so much. Have you started it?
No.
Are you reading it?
No. Were you a part of her launch team? She's been on the podcast before. So when she was on, we talked about her book Wild and Free, and it was awesome. And then so I knew when she was on, she was talking about her book already, but she couldn't tell us what it was yet. So like when I heard that she was coming out with it, I wanted to be a part of the launch team, but then like I just knew that I wouldn't be able to give what I needed to give at this time. And so now I like see all the posts and I'm like, oh, I'm missing out.
I was part of the Wild and Free launch team.
Oh my gosh.
So Wild and Free is amazing. Like, I still have yet to finish it because it's taken me so long. And I just wrote out, so since I'm 30, I was like, okay, God, I'm going to take like 10 minutes and like decide what I want to do with the next decade of my life. And I was like, this next decade is going to be wild and free. Like, wild and free, all for you. So both of those books are good as well.
Okay, so if you could empower women in one way, what would it be?
Just helping them fulfill their identity, like understand their identity fully, for the time that they're in, because that plays a role in everything.
Yeah, it's so hard. And our identity changes so many times, especially like when you go from woman to like woman and mother, a woman and mother and wife, like trying to, and then also if you bring in a business, like then it's definitely crazy.
Yes.
If you could tell your younger self one thing, assuming that she would listen, what would it be?
There's the whole assumption that she would listen. I was like a stubborn teenager.
Yes, that's why I had to throw that in there, because when I first started this question, I was like, if you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be? And everybody's like, I wouldn't listen. I was like, okay, come on. Like, assuming that you would listen, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, I would say stop being so boy crazy, because I feel like I spent so much of my time chasing things like guys, teenagers, when I was in a high school teenager. Like, that was such a huge thing for me, and I feel like I would have spent the time better either focusing on growing my other relationships or kind of just working on myself. Yeah. Instead of being distracted, and kind of just, there's a verse in, I think it's 2 Timothy, and it talks about godliness with contentment is great gain. And I feel like that's been one of the verses I've had for like a couple decades, because it's so true. Like, just be content with where you are.
We try to find our joy in other things. Like, we're always like, it's hard to rely on ourselves and be okay with, you know, searching ourselves, because it's really hard and really awkward and sort of lonely when all your friends are like, you know, dating or whatever. But like, sometimes it's just like not good when we're trying to find happiness and wholeness in something else.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that episode. I know we bounced around a lot and a lot of different tough topics, and then we jumped into business, but I know that as a woman, there are a lot of things that we go through internally that we're struggling with, and if I can make sure that I share the full story of someone and you gain one thing from one part of her story, then you know, I've done my job. And so I want to make sure that even though things are random and things maybe speak about business, which we don't normally do, that maybe if you're in that zone, if you're trying to struggle with changing your work life and making it a different and you want to do something else that you feel connected here. You feel like you're heard. You feel like you have help. Also, I really just want to say on the last topic about finding joy in other things and other people, I struggled with that for a really long time, and it wasn't until I could really find joy within myself, within my faith, that I was able to feel complete and whole. And I've found that when you rely on your joy, when you rely on that wholeness in something or somebody else, it's always going to fail you. So if you're in that place, just know that it doesn't have to be that way. And I want to really tackle this topic maybe in a different episode where we could really dig deep. And so know that I'm thinking about you. Know that the struggle is real. Like, we've all been there, and it doesn't, you don't have to stay there. With that said, if you want to check out the show notes for this page, just go to ittakesavillagepodcast.com, and there you can connect with Danielle and all the things that she's doing. You can read more about her journey, and don't forget to follow on Instagram because that is my jam. You can find me at the Ash Carol, and over there I post about all sorts of things. So hope you guys have an awesome weekend, and I can't wait for you to listen in next Wednesday.